And I thank you all for coming here for the Shloshim, for Barry, for Baruch and Shalom. And we're going to start out with hearing from Dr. Jonathan Greer for his his memories about Barry.
Okay. Thank you, Betsy. My father-in-law, Moses Feuerstein, who was president of the OU for 12 years and of Torah Masorah for over 20 years, used to say that the Almighty created two kinds of people, those who show us how to behave and those who show us how not to behave. And then he would caution us, make sure you are always one of those who show the world how to behave. I would like to illustrate to you this evening how Barry Solomon, Baruch ben Shalom of blessed memory, chose to be one of those people who live their lives to show the rest of the world how to act and behave. When I was preparing these remarks during the past several days, we tried to remember when we first met Barry, but alas, we cannot. It is at least 25 to 30 years ago. During most of those years, Barry was a guest at our home for most Shabbos and Yom Tov meals, including Purim Sudos, Sudas Havsaka for Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, and Pesach Sidurim till way early in the morning. Barry ate with us. He sang Zmiros with us. He enjoyed listening to Divrei Torah at our table each meal. He was friendly and warm in nature to all those who were present. He never lost his sense of Hakaras HaTov, of gratitude. He would always say, my compliments to the chef, every time. Over the years, he watched our children grow up. He attended our family simchas. He rejoiced with us. He called frequently during the week. He truly cared. Barry was born with and lived his life with serious challenges that most of us, thank God, never have to experience. It materially affected every part of his existence. It denied him the ability to hold a steady job, to live by himself, to have a family of his own, all simple needs that we blithely take for granted, but wishes that Barry agonized over all the time. Nevertheless, the greatness of Barry was that he did not let it conquer or consume him. This triumph of spirit expressed itself in many different ways. He loved to exercise and especially to run. He probably subscribed to every exercise and sports magazine that exists, and he read them. He ran the Chicago Marathon for a number of years and was so proud that he completed the course in respectable times. And he always hoped to be able to run in next year's marathon. Barry had serious goals for his life. He had dreams and aspirations. He always wanted to be a personal trainer, and he studied and he studied and he studied to try to achieve this and never gave up trying. He taught us by example that one should not give up easily on important personal goals that one is trying to achieve. Yiddishkeit played a major role in Barry's life. Shul and davening were central to his being. For years, he was proud to have the key to be the first to open the Anshe Motler Shul early at 6 a.m. in the morning, rain, snow, or shine, to be sure that no one had to wait in inclement weather to get in. He would put his tefillin on and be gratified to be one of the first 10 of the minyan. When, because of COVID, he was isolated for months in Westwood, which provided a safe and kosher haven for him for so many years, he would daven and read the parsha by himself. Over the years since adolescence, Barry worked at many different jobs. He used to tell us he worked at Wrigley Field, cleaning the stands in the middle of the night, often suffering abuse from anti-Semitic coworkers. He worked at Dominic's when it was at the corner of Pratt and Kedzie, stocking shelves and bagging. But best of all were the wonderful 8 years at IDT, thanks to Dr. Joseph Walder. Dr. Walder hired him to help the administrative staff. He was placed in a trustworthy position. Barry was reliable, came to work every day. He did whatever he was asked to do, never complained about the job or about any task, no matter how menial or repetitive. People enjoyed working with him because of his positive attitude. He enjoyed stocking the kitchen, not only because it was his job, because that way his coworkers would have what they wanted there. This position gave Barry a sense of stature and self-esteem. However, Dr. Walder's remarkable chesed went well beyond the role of an employer of a highly successful company. He arranged that his driver pick up Barry every day so he could get to work and return. Dr. Walder invited Barry to his house every Motzoi Shabbos for a Malava Malka and took him every Sunday morning to Minyan and then for breakfast as well. I believe the years that Barry worked at IDT were probably the happiest of his life. Barry was also a constant participant at the Ark for decades. Many members of the staff there were instrumental in making his life more meaningful. Barry was not only a client there, he also volunteered, did all sorts of things there to help their programs. He was considerate of other people. He enjoyed attending the many various functions run by the Ark. He enjoyed planting their vegetable garden in the spring and nurturing it throughout the summer. He was a regular member of Rabbi Tenenbaum's Shir and other Shirim offered there and of the Mincha Minyan. Most important to Barry was that he cared intensely about his family. From observing Barry over the years, I believe he mourned the death of his brother Mickey every day of his life. He worried about Shraga and the problems he had with his eyesight. He often spoke of his parents, their professions, their illnesses, their moving to Israel in their final years. He cared deeply for all of his nieces and nephews and cherished all his great nephews and great nieces. His constant desire was to visit the family in Israel. He appreciated every one of the family simchas, even though often he could not be present. He agonized with them over their problems. As an intensely feeling Jew, Barry's greatest wish was to live in Israel. While he was able to visit there occasionally, he never succeeded in his desire to settle there. Of all his wishes, he has finally achieved this one, but alas, not in the way he intended. In thinking about Barry, my thoughts were inexorably driven to the fascinating character of Chanoch of Parshas Bereishis. As is its way, the Torah devotes only a short 4 psukim to Chanoch. The Medrash Talpios tells us that Chanoch tofer minolim haya. Chanoch was a simple shoemaker. He sewed shoes. Yet each stitch was sewed l'shem shamayim, with divine intent, with the purpose to better the world. Indeed, the Torah tells us 2 times in these 4 psukim that Chanoch went in the path of Hashem. But then suddenly, ve'einenu, he was gone. He was with us no more. Ki lo kacho so Elokim. Hashem had taken Chanoch back to Shamayim, to heaven. This was the life of Barry Solomon, traveling his own, often lonely way in the path of Hashem. And then suddenly, one morning, he was gone. Thank
you very much, Dr. Greer. Our next speaker will be Barry's nephew, my brother-in-law, Rabbi Eli Solomon. Eli, if you could please unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Oh, wow. I get to look at myself. As Dr. Greer, who, as you were talking, brought back a lot of memories of Shabbos at your house for me as well. It's been a long time since I heard that voice. A lot of good memories. And as you mentioned, my father, I asked Bensi when he asked me about speaking, I said, what do you say at a Shloshim? So as you were talking, it brought back part of the question is, I, for better or for worse, right or wrong, part of me, as Dr. Eger, as you were talking, is thinking that maybe I need to experience this as the opportunity to experience, Barry's brother, his Shloshim as well, because I didn't get that opportunity. And I think Barry is definitely my the uncle that I knew best of the three that I have or had. And even some of what you spoke before, I didn't know most of that, all the history, which speaks also to all the many things I don't know and maybe never will about my own father as well. So with that in mind, perhaps it's apropos that what I planned to speak about tonight was actually one of the mitzvahs in this week's parsha is the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben, the mitzvah to redeem the firstborn after the 10th plague, the Makas Bechoros, where all the Egyptian firstborn were killed, and the Jewish firstborns were spared. So God says, through this plague, I have taken and sanctified the firstborn Jewish males for me. The original plan before the sin of the golden calf a few days later, weeks later, was that firstborns would be the priests, the Kohanim, to serve in the temple in the Beis HaMikdash. And it's interesting that the end of Masechtas Psachim, tractate Psachim, which is all about Pesach, Passover. So at the very end, it discusses this mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. And the question is, what is the connection between this mitzvah, which seems to be a technical mitzvah, especially now, of redeeming a firstborn and all the different laws pertaining to it. For example, the discussion at the end of the tractate is who makes the blessing when you're performing the whole ceremony, and there's a Kohen, a priest, and the father gives 5 silver coins or 5 coins to redeem his son from the Kohen, from the priest. So the question is, so there's a blessing. I don't remember exactly the words, but I think it's Al Pidyon Haben. God commanded us to redeem our son. So the Gemara discusses over there who should make the blessing of Shehechiyonu. Who should make the second blessing of Shehechiyonu? Should it be the father of the son, or should it be the Kohen? And I'm not going to get into the whole back and forth of the analytical part of it, but that's the discussion there at the end of the tractate. So the question, like I said, is what's the connection of this mitzvah from this week's parsha to the tractate of Psachim? And one answer that's given is looking in context. Why did God give this mitzvah? In that God was taking the Jews out, and God calls all the Jews his children. We are all like B'ni B'chayri Yisrael. We are God's firstborn. So after God, so to speak, spares his firstborn and only takes the Egyptians' firstborn and kills them. So out of this act of salvation is born this commandment to redeem the Jewish people. And the same is true in the tractate. The whole Masechtas Psachim, the main idea or the main topic is all about the different laws of Passover, the holiday. But where does Passover come from? Passover itself comes, right, the name Pesach of the holiday comes from this Makkah, this plague, the 10th plague, when God jumped over all the houses of the Jews and spared the firstborn of the Jews. So just like in the Torah, this mitzvah, the Pidyon Haben, is born out of the context of God acting in a fatherly way towards his firstborn son. And thereby is born the actual mitzvah, the actual commandment to concretize, so to speak, this idea of redeeming the son and giving the firstborn, so to speak, or recognizing the firstborn as belonging to God. So too, at the end of the tractate, which is born out of Pesach, which is born out of this plague, which is born out of God's salvation, God acting specifically in a fatherly way. So what is the culmination of that discussion of many, many pages is the same discussion that we had in the actual Torah, which is that this mitzvah of redeeming your firstborn because God acted in a fatherly way. So I found it apropos that, this week where we read in the Torah the actual Exodus, the Jews go out of Egypt, and the Jews leaving Egypt was only a result of a fatherly act of God acting as a father, sparing and protecting his children, and then ultimately taking them out of their darkness and their exile. So as we come together 30 days after the Shloshim of my uncle, and as I think of my family, my uncle and my father, I guess my thoughts and my wish tonight, as we come Wednesday, we already kind of shift to the Shabbos that's coming, is I wish that we should be zoicha, we should merit to the final fatherly act from God. We know that the Exodus from Egypt was the first, but the ultimate Exodus, the ultimate redemption, still yet to come. So I wish that we should merit that this week, very soon, already before Shabbos, before we read this week's Torah portion, we should merit to the final redemption, where we'll once again be reunited with not only our Father in heaven, but physical, for myself, and I speak of my sisters as well. Not that I speak for them, but I guess for tonight. That we should be reunited as a full family, both on a personal level and as a nation, Klal Yisrael, and we should go to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel, and reunite with my father and with Barry and everyone together with the coming of Mashiach, and may it be very speedily. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Next, we have a presentation from a good friend of Barry since high school, Jonathan Goldberg. And so in Israel, it's about 4:30 in the morning right now. So Jonathan sent a video clip for us to show, and we're going to show that now. Yeah, share this.
I'm going to do my best to get this a little bit out of my element here, but I think I can do it.
We're not hearing the sound.
You're not hearing it? No.
Erev Tov
You
to
hear?
you all.
Yes, it's good.
My name is John Goldberg and I live in Efrat in Israel. I was truly and deeply saddened to learn of Barry's untimely passing, b'terem. Though we live far apart, Barry and I were able to meet up and see each other from time to time, both in Chicago and here in Israel. Barry and I were classmates in the Ida Crown Jewish Academy, class of 1975. Though my memory of those years is a bit foggy, we first met as freshmen in the academy in the fall of 1971. Myself, a newbie arriving from State College, Pennsylvania, and Barry, if I'm not mistaken, was already a seasoned academy student, being there for his junior high school years. I remember Barry from then as a chevraman, easy to get along with smiles and jokes. It was a bit of a different story on the basketball court or on the running track, as we were both involved in those sports, and Barry was quite the competitor, but of course in a positive way. We know how important sports and physical fitness, especially running, was for Barry. He expressed his desire and dreams to advance in these areas, even to coach or to teach in these fields. It was enjoyable to run into Barry during visits to Chicago through the years, sometimes at the early Minyan in Anshe Matele, sometimes in Kins. And then I would be zoche to have him come over to my parents' home for a Shabbat afternoon visit. Also here in Israel, I was happy to hear from him when he visited, and was zoche to host him in our home in Efrat, and also in the zoo in Jerusalem where I'm employed. In all of these mifgashim, it was clear to me that his love of you, his family, Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and of course sports, was paramount to him. Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem mi yagur be'ohelecha, mi yishkonim bahar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal al lishono, lo asa l'reu ra'ah, v'chirpa lo nasa al krovo. That's how I remember Barry. Baruch ben Shalom. Yehi zichracha Baruch.
First of all, I want to thank the Lazovsky family for doing this Chesed Shalemis and giving us an opportunity, to get a little closure. I'm like a lot of people and still sort of in shock from how sudden this was, and in particular because of COVID. I think it's very hard to pay proper tribute to somebody given the circumstances. That a little remez in the parsha said that it says Lo shomu el Moshe mekoitzu ruach me'avoda kosha. The coronavirus has wrecked our economy, and it's also obviously wrecked our health. And it says remez today it says kotzer ruach. People get sick, get shortness of breath, and avoda kosha. It's very hard to find work. So this is a Zoom opportunity is a chesed for all of us. I want to thank you. It's, I guess, partial nechama, as was mentioned, that Barry is finally in Eretz Yisrael. He really always had a chibas oretz. He spoke often about Eretz Yisrael and his desire to live in Eretz Yisrael. Obviously, we would have hoped he'd lived there in a different manner than he made Aliyah this time. But, there was a certain nechama that he is where he wanted to be. I was recalling how I met Barry. Barry's, if I remember correctly, I think his mother had passed away. His father, he was living with his father, and then Shrag, his brother, decided to bring his father to Eretz Yisrael. So Shraga had somehow contacted me and said, okay, we got to find a place for my brother. He's not going to have anybody there. We're getting whatever, how if they had a house, they sold the house. So so I started working with Barry, and we decided we would put him in our residence initially, and then figure out some kind of better housing opportunity for him afterwards. And I had spoken to Shraga a lot. He was nervous about moving. His father in Israel, his father was already up in years. And, leaving Barry, what was going to happen to Barry? So he might have called me 20 times even, and we kept mulling over what our plan would be. And finally the day came, Shraga flew into the States, and somehow or another, he flew in, hopped his father, went right back to the airport. And I was a little disappointed. Barry was kind of on my doorstep over at the Ark, and I'd never met Shraga in person. It all happened, in the space of an hour. And we Baruch Hashem always had a great, great relationship with Barry, and you know, and all of us loved working with him. And you know, I'm pondering a little about Barry, that he, you know, the pasuk Tamim Tiyim Hashem Elokecha really comes to mind with Barry. It's like he was gentle, he was always sincere, and you know, he really won the love and friendship of the Cream of Chicago, the people like the Greers, Rabbi Abramson, the Anshe Matala family, who was when Barry was in the nursing home, somebody from Matala would pick him up and bring him back to the nursing home every day from Minyanim. The shul was very devoted to him. Dr. Naama Wasserman at the Ark and my friend Shimon were all very devoted to Barry. And as was mentioned, Dr. Walder was wonderful to Barry. And, you know, not everybody has the siyata d'shmaya to make wonderful friends like this and have people really look out for you. But I think, you know, in this Alma de Shikra that we live, there was something very refreshing and beautiful about Barry. You know, he was the real thing. He was always sincere, always real. And there was something special about this relationship. So at any rate, Shraga flies in, flies out. I never even saw him, but you know, after all these conversations, I'm a little disappointed I didn't get a chance to meet him. But like I said, things worked out pretty good with Barry. And I share the story because maybe 15 years later, my oldest son got married in Yerushalayim. So I had not been back to Israel since my yeshiva days. It had been 30 plus years since I was in Eretz Yisrael. And but you know, we go to Yerushalayim for the chasana, and of course, before the chasana, we didn't do a lot of sightseeing, but we went to the Kotel, of course, and they had this tour of the Kotel tunnels. So we decided, it was with my whole family, we would go on this tour, and the tour guide, you know, was doing a spiel and telling us about the different things in the tunnel and whatever history, and something was nagging at me, and I said, you know, I don't know this guy. His face wasn't familiar at all, but like I feel like I know him from somewhere, and I just couldn't place it. And I remember at a certain point in the tour, they showed this big giant stone that was somehow in the bottom walls of the Kotel, and he said, "See this stone? It's impossible for anybody to lift it. It was like 10 tons or something." And somehow when he said that, the light bulb went off, and I realized that was Shragi Solomon, who was leading the tour. He'd been a Rebbe in BMT many years, and Yeshiva close, and he was doing this tour guiding. And so, you know, I was this moment of shock. Here's this guy I talked to 20 times, and, you know, Barry was really, you know, at that point, really family. You know, I was seeing Barry every day of the week. And finally, I get to meet Shraga. So at some point, when we was taking us from one section to the other, I go tap him on the shoulder, and I tell him who I am, and you know, we made the connection. But I remember it, you know, thinking back that, you know, here I am at the holiest place in the world, you know, Heilige Kosel Maravi, and I was thinking, you know, I'm going to have to go back to the States, but this guy was showing me the Kotel. He deposited this holy neshama with me, and with all of us, our family in the Ark. And we had these chus all these years to work with Barry. You know, I'm heartbroken that we're not going to have future years to work with them, but it was truly you know, I loved Barry. He was truly a member of our family in every imaginable way. You know, we went through better times, not so good times. You know, one person I neglected to mention who was also very good to Barry, it was on my list, but I forgot to look at it in the notes, was Dr. Lieberman, also over at Westwood, was, you know, always looked out for Barry. You know, I just want to end with a memory that Barry, we spent many Yom Tovim together. You know, we would do meals and different things in the Ark. And on Rosh Hashanah, Barry was my regular bal makri. I would always blow the shofar for people who weren't in shul and didn't hear shofar, and I needed a makri. And Barry was my, for many years running, was my bal makri. And you know, now that he's not with us, I just want to end it. You know, he should be mainly Yosher for you know, all of us, his extended Chicago family that had so many nice memories and wonderful times with him. And we should be zeicher. He should go to the Kisei Kavod and to Kaaba Shoifer Gadol L'Cheruseinu. And Be'ez Hashem should be we should see Barry like Eli mentioned, Bakarov with Bias Mashiach, and after Tchias Mason.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi Tenenbaum. And finally, we're going to hear a few words from Rabbi Alan Abramson from Anshe Matal Shul.
Thank you, Rabbi Lazovsky, and I echo the sentiments of all the earlier speakers. I just want to conclude very briefly to say that Chazal, our sages, tell us that the one who comes to the base medrash or the base knesses first thing in the morning and is the last one to leave, there's a special place in Shemayim for that individual. And as Dr. Greer mentioned, Barry was not just the first to open up the shul at the Matala, but he was also the last to leave. He would wait for Ben Craven, Oliver Shalom, a blessed memory. And Ben, the two of them would get in Ben's big car, and he would take a U-turn on California Avenue and then go back to Westwood. But the reason Ben was the last one out is because Ben would make sure, take care of the Svarim, take care of the Sidurim. Sometimes they would put together a little bit of a Kiddush. And Barry not only was a very good helper to Ben, but he loved to do that. And he would come early in the morning on Shabbos, the 7 a.m. minyan, and he would help Ben set up the Kiddush. And he ate very little. He was not a big eater, Barry. He hardly even participated in the Kiddush, a little bit. But and he certainly didn't drink scotch or anything, any of the other types of spirits that might have been put onto the table. But it gave him a great love of people and his desire to help and to serve. And this was Barry's chiyus. This was his mohus. This was his soul. This was his neshama. This was his essence, was to do for others. And we are, while the speakers were very generous in saying how much we did for Barry, it's really what Barry did for us. And Barry gave us the opportunity to be with him and to see the person come into shul, the first one, the last one out, and to help and to clean, to set up the Kiddush, and whatever it might have been, it was Barry who was always there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Abramson. At this point, we are done with the program of the Shloshim. Anyone who wants to, you can stay on and unmute and try to talk if you want to talk to them. I know it's hard with many people talking to each other, but we'll leave the meeting on for a little bit longer for people who would like to share a memory.
Thank you, Bentzi.
Would you like to say something, Nama?
Looks like Amal wanted to talk. Yeah.
Just that Barry really had a very, very special pure neshama. And, you know, one of his essences was really being grateful to all the people around him. And I know especially for you, the Greers, what you've done for him is just an incredible mitzvah in providing a home and a family for him all those years. And, you know, that's a zchutz that will surely, amongst all the many mitzvot that you've made, is inscribed for you in Shamayim. And yeah, we knew him for a long time. I actually met him when I first came to the Ark 20 years ago, and we've been through a lot of ups and downs, you know, some really tough times, as you know, a lot of visits in the hospital and, you know, hospitalization that we had to be involved in. And I remember a trip to the airport and a time when I tried to get him to settle with my sister in Israel. Lots of history. And yeah, through all of it, he somehow never lost his faith and his hope of eventually being united with the family in Israel. And I've always felt like, you know, that despite, you know, all of our attempts, we just didn't find the right kind of place for him, either here or Israel, where he could live with dignity and comfort and connection. So that is a sorrow that I'll continue to carry with me. But thank you very much for all three of you, actually, for sustaining that pure soul through all those years. Thank you.
Thank
His
you.
memory will be for a blessing.
Amen.
Bill, if you want to say something, unmute and say it.
Henry, did you want to say something?
I was going to, but my brother covered very well for me. So, but did I see Soretta with you is my good friend Ravaye Lev. I haven't seen her in a long time. So hope everyone is doing well. And thank you again for putting together the tonight's Shloshim, and also to Ben Sion for organizing the Mishnayos that many of us learned was Zecher Nishmaso Shel Berry. That was very nice. Had John not covered for me, and had I had to really speak, I see Moshe Neidich laughing. I would have referred to the Mishnah Perkei Avot on Ezed Derech Tova She'ibak B'Hadam, all the good qualities, Ayin Tova, Chaver Tov, Shachin Tov, Lev Tov, and how all of those attributes, I think, really personified Barry. So I won't elaborate on that, but yeah, I think it's also a good way to remember him, that he exemplified all of those nice attributes. I'll also just say, I see in addition to the Lozovskis, Moshe Neidich, other people I haven't seen in a while. I think my mother's on the call, so I'll say good evening to her, and also to Soretta, to your mother, Mrs. Allswang. So again, even under these circumstances, it's good to see people that with the COVID and everything I haven't seen for a while. So thank you.
Thanks, Henry.
So I'd like to share something.
Okay, this is Moshe Neidich.
Yeah, this is Moshe Neidich from the Bronx. I met Barry when I was at the Bernard Horwich JCC, and we used to play flag football. I used to play in the same league, and we used to play flag football together back in the Gail Sayers time. So that was about 1968, 69. And I just like to say he was a very, very good athlete. He always had the drive, and he was the fullback on the team, and he always took the ball, and whenever anything needed to get done, he seemed to get the ball and get the job done. Very, very long time ago. And then he would always, when I went to visit my father and mother in Chicago, he put a kins, and he would also engage with me and ask me how I was doing, and I always asked him how he was doing. And of course, he had his challenges, but he was always a guy, remembering him from playing sports, he was always a a go-getter, and he had a lot of spunk, and he really had goals that he wanted to meet, and I always admired him for that. He just kept on trying. He was a very, very, very nice guy. But I remember specifically playing flag football, and nothing could stop him. It was crazy. We would always just look at him. It was very nice.
Thank you, Moshe, for sharing. Thank you very much. I see Bill Post wants to say something. He's on the phone. Bill?
He said he doesn't have audio, but he typed here. Are you aware that Barry had been on an old YouTube video filmed in 1977 for many years, which was filmed at the Skokie JCC at an anti-Nazi rally?
Oh, no.
I did not know that, but from what everyone who spoke tonight said about Barry's connection with Yiddishkeit, it's no surprise that he went to an anti-Nazi rally.
Thanks for sharing that, Bill. It looks like Debbie Greenberg wants to say something.
Yeah, so Debbie, you can unmute.
Debbie, can you unmute?
You can't. You can ask her to unmute, but you can't unmute
Right.
her.
Debbie, can you unmute? Hello.
Hi. So much has been said about Barry tonight that really I want to echo and it's so and say that I've had a very similar experience. I just want to add one small nakudo, and that's that Barry had the greatest smile, and it really did light up the whole room, and it would lift everyone's spirits, mine included, and it was always good to be around him, and hadn't seen him for quite a while, but he's truly going to be missed. You know, we're all going to miss him very much, and I speak for myself and many clients at the ARC and staff as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who wants to say something? Apparently Debbie did not want to say anything. Sorry, Debbie. Did anyone else want to say or add anything?
I'll just like to say a couple words myself. This is Shlomo Cherek. As Dr. Greer mentioned, he spent several good years working for Dr. Walder, as I did. As Gabbai of the Wi-Fi building, Mincha Minyan, as all the previous speakers have mentioned, Barry wanted an opportunity to help out, not only working for IDT, but assisting whenever he could in the Mincha Minyan. No activity was too small for him to be willing to participate in. So I could always call on Barry when we had to say Tillim at the end of the davening, which we did for the various cholim. Barry would be there to make sure that these cards that we presented to all the mispalim to say the Tillim at the end of davening, I can count on Barry to be able to distribute them for each one of the members who were davening there, and of course to pick them up at the end of the davening and put them away so they would be there for the next time. If our Gabbai Tzedakah was not there that day, Nate Rubenstein, I could count on Barry to go around and collect the tzedakah. He had, as previous mentioned in one of the speakers, a sincere lev tov. He had a good heart. Dr. Greer and Mrs. Greer gave us the opportunity one time when my wife Chani and I were going to Eretz Yisrael. We had an opportunity to take Barry with us on the trip. And he was very excited about being able to go, as mentioned by the previous speakers, to be able to be in Artseinu HaKadosha, to be there with his family. He was very proud of his brother, the guide, as was mentioned previously, and his love for Eretz Yisrael, as Dr. Greer and others have mentioned, was very evident in that trip And throughout his stay in my familiarity with him throughout the years in the Wi-Fi building, because he always talked about trying to get to Eretz Yisrael. So this Leib Tov had a tremendous effect upon anybody who saw him. He was sincere, and that is a commodity we don't have too much in these days, of sincerity. And it's something that I will always cherish as a fond memory of him. And I thank you all for putting on this wonderful Shloshim. I have to use the word wonderful, even though we're talking about a Shloshim, because I had an opportunity to hear from so many people the feelings that I myself had for Barry. And that should be for Schus, for his Neshama, Yehi Zichro Baruch, and may we meet with him again, Ezra Hashem, B'mheira Rameinu, with Mashiach Sekenu. Amen.
I mean, I just want to mention, in case people didn't know, the Levaya, Barry's Levaya is on YouTube. I mean, if you search Barry Solomon Levaya, it'll pop up in case people want to see that. He is buried on Har Tamir, which his brother Shraga said it is not Har Menuchos, which it's a different entrance to Har Menuchos, but the deed said Har Menuchos, even though it's Har Tamir. So he is with his parents on Har Menuchos there. And again, if anyone else wants to unmute and say something, we'll be happy to hear from you. Please unmute.
Yeah, I years ago, before I was married, I went with some guys to play racquetball, and when it was my turn to have a match against Barry, Barry didn't talk much, but after he shut me out 21-0, he said, you know, since I shut you out 21-0, I think I ought to give you some pointers. And at that point, he spoke up and he told me where to stand and how to hold the racket, so that he did improve my technique a little bit after that.
I think he gave me the same lesson, Bob.
It was a good one.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, Henry.
So again, just if no one else wants to say anything, we're happy for everyone who has shared. We really appreciate it. And if no one is going to unmute, we'll just end the meeting in a minute or two. But thank you very much for being here and for showing us for this tribute to Barry, and for showing that he was a important part of our community, and we're all missing him. So thank you very much for being here and for your kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
From a long time ago.
Right. Uh-huh. Right. I don't know if my sister's still on, Leela and Gary.
I don't know if she's still here. They were here. I don't think they're here anymore.
Oh, last time I saw Shraga, besides in Israel in 2009, was when Steve and I got married in 97. He brought both his parents to our wedding.
But they were still living here?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. He brought, Shragi came in, and they tried to sell their apartment building and then brought them to Israel.
Okay, we're recording.
What happened?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. What else? I lost my train of-
No. So, and I know your mother also took Barry.
Yeah,
took Barry to Israel so he could see his parents.
Right.
That's nice.
Yeah. I think his father may have been gone not long after they moved to Israel, because he was not around, because I went to his mother in 2009. So I think she died in 2009 or 2010. I don't remember, something like that. It wasn't long after.
Yeah, 2009. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. And he came over to our house and we would see him jogging. sometimes. And yeah, he befriended my mother, or my mother befriended him, whatever.
Nice.
They probably bonded on their trip to Israel.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't mean to put you on the